right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. 8.01, solving radical equations. So first off, you want to ask yourself, what is a radical equation? A radical equation is an equation in which a variable is under a radical. For example, 2x, you have the square root of that. So the square root of 2x equals 10. The x is under the radical. X is a variable. Here's another couple examples to see. Identifying radical equations. On the left side, you have radical equations. There is a variable underneath each radical symbol. Square root of x minus 8 equals 1 is the first example. On the right side, non-radical equations. Even though there's a radical, there is not a variable under the radical. So there's a big difference there. Make sure you notice the difference between the left column and the column on the right. So how do we eliminate the square root symbol? So here's your example. Solve the square root of x equals 4. What should we do first? Well, how can we isolate the variable? First thing first, you want to square both sides. Keep in mind that squaring is the opposite of taking the square root. So the opposite of the square root of x is to square it, raise it to the power of 2. And remember, just like any other equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. You want to keep it equal and balanced. You end up getting x equals 16. The square root symbol and the power of 2 will cancel each other out. You're left with x, and then 4 squared is 16. That answer is correct. We check it. All right, here's another one. You have the square root of 5x plus 4 equals 7. Now notice everything is under the square root symbol on the left side of the equal sign. The question you always ask, what do we do first? How can we get rid of the square root symbol? If you remember from the previous question, you want to square both sides. So if you notice, everything in parentheses now to the second power on the left, everything in parentheses to the second power on the right. And as we recall, the square root is eliminated by the squaring, or the power of 2. You're going to be left with, 5x plus 4 equals 49. Now that is a basic equation there. You want to subtract 4 from both sides. You get 5x equals 45. Divide both sides by 5. You get x equals 9. Check your answer by plugging it back into the equation. Take that 9. 9 times 5 is 45. 45 plus 4 is 49. The square root of 49 is 7. That is correct. Great job. Here's another one, all worked out already. So you have the square root of 3x plus 7 equals the square root of 19. Square both sides. The square root symbols get eliminated. You're left with 3x plus 7 equals 19. That turns into 3x equals 12 after you subtract 7 from both sides. Divide both sides by 3, you get x equals 4. Remember, check your answer by plugging it back into the equation. 3 times 4, 12. 12 plus 7 is 19. Square root of 19 equals the square root of 19. That is correct. What about now if we have equations, or radical equations with variables outside the radical? Let's see what we do. We have a square root of x plus 9 minus 7 equals x. You want to bring that negative 7 or that minus 7 to the other side by using inverse operations. So add 7 to both sides. Now you have this step 2. And just like before, you want to square both sides. So the x plus 9 under the radical gets eliminated by the power of 2. And then x plus 7, if you remember from DBA, I think number 3, you have to do the FOIL method. X plus 7 times x plus 7 turns into x squared plus 14x plus 49. Bring everything to one side. Bring the x over, bring the 9 over using subtraction. Now you want to factor that trinomial. Find the two numbers that add up to b and multiply to c. b is the 13, c is the 40. So what two numbers multiply to 40 add up to 13? 5 and 8. Those are your two possible solutions. Use the zero product property to set each binomial equal to 0, and then solve for x on each of them. You have x equals -5, x equals -8. But remember, plug them back in to check. If you plug in that -5, does it work? You plug in that -8, does it work? The -5 works, but the -8 does not. Remember, always plug your answers back in and check them separately. Here's one more, all worked out for you. Square root of x plus 5 plus 1 equals x. You're going to bring that 1 over to the other side, square both sides. The radical symbols get eliminated. On the right side, you have to FOIL x minus 1 times x minus 1. Then you're going to bring everything to the right side, set it equal to 0. Factor, what two numbers multiply to -4 and add up to -3? -4, +1. Set both of those equal to 0. Solve for x. Remember, you got to factor what multiplies to c and adds up to b. Use the zero product property, and then check each one separately. The 4 works, the -1 does not. I hope that was beneficial. Let your teacher know if you have any questions. We're here for you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.